guys, this is Alan from the JCR Off-Road Garage. Today we're going to be installing our JK Shield Carrier. First though, you're going to need to remove your factory carrier like I've done here. But let's see how that's done.
Start by removing your spare tire. Using an 8mm socket, remove the 8 volts holding the stock tire carrier to the tailgate. Turn the tire carrier around. You'll see 4 screws holding the plastic to the other side of the tire carrier. Remove those 4 screws now. Once those 4 screws are out, you'll be able to pull this little piece of plastic off the front. You'll see the wire going up to the 3rd brake light. You need to unplug that 3rd brake light and then unstring the wire. Now remove the vent underneath the tire carrier, just being held in with a few plastic clips.
The first part you're going to want to install is going to be the spindle. Now, for video purposes, we're going to install it with off the Jeep, but this can be done with the bumper on the Jeep. It's just a little bit harder. First, you're going to take the bolt and put it through the bottom of the sleeve due to the tight clearances. Slide the spindle down the sleeve and start threading the bolt in. Should look like this when you're done. Leave this loose for now. You'll tighten it later once the carrier's on. Now you're going to install the tailgate plate onto the tailgate using the 8mm button heads that we give and a 5mm Allen head wrench. Now we're going to install the isolator block. It's going to fit between these 2 tabs here, and you're going to take your 2 bolts and slide them in through the holes and the 3/8 flange washer on the other side. I do recommend going in from this side. I have found it's easier to tighten down later during adjustment if it's facing the driver's side. Leave this loose for right now. You'll adjust it more later. Now we're going to install the HEIM joint. I want to take a few seconds to show you it before it actually gets installed and hidden behind the carrier. A HEIM joint that we use has a male end and a female end, and you screw it in or out to extend or to shorten it, and this is how you're going to adjust where your shield carrier sits on your Jeep once everything's installed. It also comes with some of these misalignment washers that once they're installed, they're going to help allow the HEIM to move back and forth, up and down once it's installed. So let's just finish getting this installed. Now, I recommend taking the female end and placing it on the tire carrier for ease of adjustment later on. So again, misalignment washer on either side, your 1/2 by 2 inch bolt with washer in the top, both washers, there it goes, and then the flange nut on the bottom. Now at this point, this is more than enough, just keep it loose, kind of slide that off to the side. We're going to come back to this later once the carrier's on. Let's get dirty! It's time to pack bearings. Now, when you get your boxes, you're going to get 2 set 5 Timken bearings. Don't panic when you don't find your races, they're already in your carrier. Now, we're going to pack these, and I've swapped out my gloves for some latex ones that I can throw away when I'm done, since this again is going to be messy. So take some grease, you're going to kind of palm it into your hand, take the edge of the bearing, and you're going to press it into the bearing. Kind of go around in small circles, pressing the grease into the bearing until you see it start to ooze out the top and the bottom. So now we're going to get that bearing that we just packed into our carrier. There's that race I told you about earlier. Bearing's going to sit in like that. We're going to take our oil seal. Nice thing about this is your can should also have some of that grease still on it. You're going to put a quick little dab around the inside of the oil seal. So for these seals, you want to stick the metal in first with the plastic or the rubber on the outside. So like this. Now, if you're lucky enough to have a piece of metal that fits the exact size of this, you can easily use that to help tap this in. If not, then a quick punch. So now it's time to get the carrier actually onto the spindle. Now, this might take a little bit. It is a very tight tolerance between the bearing and the spindle. So a little maneuverability till it drops. I'm gonna start by lifting up a little bit, sliding that down, and we'll get this secondary bearing seated. Or try to. Again, this might take a little bit of maneuvering because of the tight tolerances for the bearings. There it goes. All right, you see the carrier sits a lot differently once that other one's in there. I'm gonna take a very large washer that we sent with it and the nut. To tighten down the spindle, you're gonna need a 1.5 inch socket for the nut on the top. You're gonna need a 1 1/8 wrench for the bolt on the bottom, and a torque wrench set to 65 foot-pounds. Now it's time for the JCR spindle cap. I've gotten a little bit of that grease when I was putting it in, but just to be sure, I'm going to steal a little bit of it and put it around this little O-ring we provide, again, just to give it a little bit of an extra seal. And this threads in right here. And we send out this nifty spindle cap wrench just designed for our spindle caps. Now this doesn't need to be super tight, but just enough that you get a good seal with that O-ring. Like that. Before we attach the HEIM to the carrier, we also want to make sure we adjust this isolator. To do that, we're just going to finger tighten down these bolts right here so that when this moves, it's going to stay where the shield carrier puts it. And then we're just going to close it, press firmly on the shield carrier so it moves up that little bit to where it needs to be. Open the shield carrier back up and tighten down. Now we're going to attach the HEIM to the shield carrier. Don't forget your misalignment washers. They're going to go with the small end pointing towards the HEIM on the top and the bottom. To tighten down, you need a 3/4 inch socket and probably an extension just to give you a little bit of space. Still a little loose if you get any noise out of that HEIM moving up and down. And we're good to go. Now it's time to put the tire mount on. We're gonna start with the base. We're gonna mount it up to your tire. Now before we get started putting the tire mount on, we do need to take some measurements from your tire so that we know where this is gonna go. Let me grab the tire for this one and we'll find out. Now we're running a 38 inch tire on Doghouse. You'd think I'd just be able to divide 38 in half and find out what half the size of this tire is, but not every tire is made the same, so it's always good just to double check. I'm gonna take my tape measure down from about top of the tire, halfway down. I'm showing 19 inches. So that's what we're gonna use to mount our tire mount. Now we're gonna take that 19 measurement that we got, which puts us right about there. I want the center of my tire mount to be there. And I'm gonna graze it up just a little bit, because when in doubt, it's always good to go a little higher. Make sure that that tire doesn't rub on the bumper. Flange nuts on the back, hold it in place. Now before we put the outer tire mount on here, we need to find out exactly what the depth of the tire is so that when we mount the tire, the sidewalls of it press up against the carrier, and that's gonna cut down any wear and tear on your carrier. To figure out what length you need to set your tire mount to, we need to figure out the inside length of your tire. To do that, we're gonna measure from the inside point here to the edge of the sidewall. And to do that, we're gonna use something straight like this shop broom and measuring tape to measure from the inside to the top. Take that back to the bottom of the broom. And I am showing 6 inches and I'll call it 6.5 inches. So that's what we need to make our tire mount. Now to mount the outer part to the inner part of the tire mount, you're gonna use the carriage bolts as we sent you. And you can tell there's square cutouts on the top. Now I usually just mount the top one in when I take my measurements. I'm gonna slide that up. And then put 1/2 inch flange nut inside just to hold this in place while I get it adjusted. Again, just finger tight so it stays where I put it. So to set your measurement, we had 6.5 inches. I'm gonna take this and looks like I am actually at about a 6 1/4 with where it's sitting right now, and that's actually perfect. You want to have it actually a little bit under the size of it so that when you mount the tire and put the lug nuts on, it actually sucks that sidewall, gives a little bit of pressure against the carrier. It's going to cut down that rattling. So let me tighten this up. Now, tire up and on. Now we use 1/2 inch lug nuts. So you're gonna have to use a 3/4 inch socket to put them in. Now the last piece you're gonna install is this little isolator. Now what this does is it stops the HEIM joint in the tire carrier from swinging open too wide and causing damage to both your tailgate or your body. It uses a 3/8 flange nut, which is gonna go behind the HEIM, and there's this little hole right here. You should hold that in place with your finger, line it up, and take the threaded end of the bump stop into the hole, and thread in. Now that we've got the tire mounted, we need to make sure that there's not going to be any kind of rattling that's going to annoy you while you're driving down the highway or going to the mall. So we're going to do that is we're going to actually shake the tire real well and see if we get any sounds. That's a pretty good sound. I'm going to adjust the HEIM now to suck it in a little bit more so the tire carrier presses against that isolator a bit more. Now we needed to tighten this up a little bit, so I'm going to screw in the HEIM joint 1, maybe 2 turns. I'm going to do 2. I'm going to slide it back over to the carrier, put the misalignment washer back in, line everything up. And that's it, shield carrier's in. Now you're ready to hit the mall or the trail. If you have any questions about this install, feel free to give me a call or shoot me an email at alan@jcrOffroad.com. Until next time, keep it wheels down.